Alright, so I'm finally back talking about more stages for my biased version of Smash. Here's the full set of stages before diving into details, but one thing you may notice is that everywhere is here from Smash 64, including a now selectable Battlefield Final Destination as well as Meta Crystal. I think their subtitles in Melee were secret, so I guess we'll keep that the same. But yeah, I almost feel like Melee did sort of try everywhere is here. Like the only stage that is really just not there at all, considering some stages got replaced or have its theming applied to a new stage that I can think of from the first game is Saffron City. But even then, I know there were some weird circumstances regarding the second Pokemon stage, but we're going to do that here. And another thing, too, is I wouldn't necessarily be too afraid to make modifications to the stage as opposed to making a whole new stage. The big example here being Sector Z, which was shrunken and given a new background for Corneria. Here, even if I wanted to shrunk it, I would have kept it as Sector Z. But in Melee, one thing that I liked was having 2 stages per franchise, so as you can see, I've sort of went along with that as well. Which means all of our pre-existing franchises need one more stage. For our second Mario stage, I felt like the perfect counter is Bowser's Castle, subtitle Koopa Kingdom. I feel like it would take most of its inspiration from Mario 64, but also sort of have some influence from Mario Kart 64. I'm not super creative, as you probably could have already told with the previous stage part if you watched it, but for a lot of these stages, I tried to apply an existing stage theme, or not theme, an existing stage layout. And in this case, I feel like the Green Greens layout could work here. Just instead of the Kirby theme blocks, you now have Mario theme blocks. I think it's a decent layout, and it fits in well enough here. For Zelda, I went with Clock Tower, subtitle Termina. The pre-existing layout that I think could kind of work here is the Congo Jungle from N64, with the central platforms rotating that you can pass through that sort of could match up with the clock itself, and the barrel cannons being removed because obviously it doesn't really fit here. And I want them on a stage, but I'm not really concerned about having them on multiple stages. For Pokemon, I'm going with Pokemon Stadium, subtitle Kanto. I don't really have anything to say here. I feel like this was a really creative, fun, fitting stage for the franchise, and I probably wouldn't change a thing with it. For Kirby, I've went with the other main antagonists, or I guess not really antagonist at this point, layer, being Meta Knight's Halberd, subtitle Dreamland Skies. I feel like Venom's layout could work very well here. The wings are very similar between the Great Fox and the Halberd, I think. I don't know, maybe down the line I would experiment with sort of the size and the angle of the wings. I never felt like this stage was the most fun, but I felt like it still sort of had some potential with some tweaks, so I would probably try some stuff with it. Now, this stage is probably misleading because you're probably thinking I'm throwing in Big Blue, right? As is. And that's actually not the case. First off, the stage would now be called Big Blue 2, subtitle Queen Cup, and it would essentially take the layout of Mute City from Melee. Or at least inspiration, where you'll be on the platform and it'll take you throughout the stage at certain drop-off points. I did Big Blue instead of Mute City because our original F-Zero stage took place in Mute City, so I felt like Big Blue would offer something a little different and is sort of the next logical choice for the series. For Star Fox, I've decided to go with Meteo, subtitle Lilat System again. And I have to break out GIMP for this one because this is the one here where I came up with a layout. So it'll take place on a giant asteroid. It will be circular, so you'll have sort of like a little hill on both sides. That could play a role in ducking and such. It won't be like Mario Galaxy or Windy Hill with any gravity effects. And the last part of this stage, which I guess is sort of the gimmick, is that you'll have mini asteroids fly by that'll serve as temporary platforms, and they cannot be passed through. They will also be circular, and I imagine that you would be going one direction or the other. I don't think it matters in general, meaning all asteroids will sort of be traveling either left or right, but the speed and the height will vary. In this case, I chose starting on the left side of the screen, going to the right, which I guess would match the Great Fox, so either way, it doesn't really matter. I always put 2 L's in when I search up Colisseum, but our new Fire Emblem stage will be more specific, not just generic Colisseum. It'll be based on the latest games at the time, which are actually going to be the Drug Joel games, which is also the subtitle, the stage itself being Tharcia Colisseum. Once again, the layout's going to be completely different. This time, this one's maybe a little more of a stretch, but I can actually kind of picture it working decently well, and that's using the Yoshi Island melee layout. Rather than pipes on the one end, you'll have worn down pillars, rather than the rotating blocks. In the center on the ground, you'll have a breakable bridge that'll eventually respawn, and above you'll have pass-through platforms, and then you just got the hill, which I guess could be seen as the entrance to the Colosseum. Our new Banjo-Kazooie stage will come from the sequel, like Majora's Mask, one of the few franchises that got big new entries in between Melee and 64, but this one's even more of a stretch. I'm going to use the Onet, or Onet, or however you say it, layout, so I can sort of picture the Jinjo houses. I guess taking some creative liberties, some of them would be different heights. In the actual game, they're all the same. And then instead of cars passing by and damaging people on the floor level, you'll have Jinjos zoom by. The subtitle here would be Isle o' Hags. For a new retro stage for one of our new Echo Fighters, we've got Mach Ride subtitle 1A, which would be the background from the cover art that you see. That's what level I believe it is. This is another original layout that I came up with. So the street is the only playable area. You can't walk in the grass. You'll just fall right off the stage. So you'll have the street itself, and then you'll have 2 lamps on both sides of the stage that would be passed through. That's what these little things are. And this was just a rough sketch. They would be the same height and size. And the gimmick here will be that the stage will occasionally, an arrow will appear, and similar to turning in Mach Ride, you'll slowly shift over to either the left or right, and then back to the center, and then once again to the left or right again. This would affect the positioning of the lamp and that pass-through platform. One last thing we can throw in here is a little patch of dirt that I guess could be randomly placed on the road that would slow a fighter down if they happen to walk on it. Another retro stage for our other retro fighter would be Manhole subtitle Flat Zone. I don't really need this is a unique layout, but I don't really need the diagram for this one because it's pretty self-explanatory if you can sort of see it there. Or maybe some of these other images are clearer to see. But that's the plain layout of it. I guess platforms are not passed through, but I guess you can try them being passed through too. And of course, I don't know if you'll have the Game & Watch guy there, but you will have a pass-through platform spawning back and forth between the different gaps. Similarly, we're going to give Donkey Kong 2 stages this time, because we didn't have any last time. We're going to have one based on the retro games, or I guess maybe they're all retro at this point, one based off the classic arcade games. I feel like 25M is the more interesting choice, a little more iconic, and I can see a little more potential for a fun stage than 75M wound up being. I guess the layout is a little similar to Moray Towers, but once again, it's pretty much one for one. Something that would be new to Smash, but not necessarily needs to be drawn out. The difference I guess I would have is that I wouldn't have the Donkey Kong there at all, and I would only very rarely have a barrel go down. A lot less frequently than we see stuff flying around in 75N, and I think same with the fire flame head thing that comes from the bottom of the stage as well. I guess some of the different barrel varieties with movement, and I think the blue ones jump. I haven't played this in a while, but those would occasionally happen too. But like I said, barrels in general aren't going to happen as frequently. Subtitle is Big Ape City. Once again, this is another deceiving stage. Jungle Hijinx, subtitle Congo Jungle. Not the same layout. In fact, this layout will pretty much be Jungle Japes. I just feel like sort of basing this off the first level of Donkey Kong Country, having, I mean, obviously the stage, you have two risen platforms, and then in the center, you have one that's slightly lower and one that's slightly higher, but also sort of smaller. Just instead of the Jungle Japes theme, you would have the Jungle Hijinx theme to it. So instead of bridges, you would just have patches of land in that. I think it would almost match, particularly that center part, with one of the early parts of the first level, if I remember correctly, but I might be wrong with that. And then on the left, you would have the treehouse too. I guess that could still sort of be bridge-like or a little different, but... And then no water beneath either. I don't remember. I think you can swim in the later games, so that won't be a thing here, but that's how this would work out. We've got two new franchises, which would, of course, both get two new stages. So the first we've got is Perfect Dark. First stage is dataDyne, subtitle, I don't know how you pronounce that, Lucrene Tower? And this would essentially be the new Icicle Mountain. Just, platforms all passed through, placed all over the place. Well, actually, there was a couple not passed through, but... And then you'll be infinitely scrolling. Maybe down in this case, because that would actually match the mission more. But maybe you can go both ways. I don't know, but it's similar enough. And the other Perfect Dark stage would be Holo VR Training, subtitle Carrington Institute. The layout would wind up being Congo Falls from Melee, or at the time Congo Jungle, but instead of a barrel cannon, you'll just have something, I don't know, maybe it looks like the coin shooter from Brawl or something that fits within, Perfect Dark, close enough, that'll launch you up. Platforms all sort of laid out the same, and same status passed through or not. Not much I would change to the actual layout itself. I think it's a really good layout that I really wanted to include, even if it's not one of the most logical choices I've made, I guess. As for Killer Instinct, our first stage is Combo Gym, subtitle for this and for the other Killer Instinct too. I think it's just going to be Killer Instinct Tournament, or Tourney. KI Tourney Tournament. I don't know if Killer Instinct Tournament altogether would have been too much for a subtitle in terms of length, but I'm going to get a little lazy with this one. This layout is going to be an altered version of Boxing Ring. I would lower the lights so that they're a little more of a factor, and I would get rid of the walkable area outside of the ring to the edges, and instead you'll have a platform on both sides in sync going up and down at an angle, similar to the cut floor that the actual boxing ring has, except I would maybe make it higher, elevate it a little more. And the other Killer Instinct stage would be Ultratech. And this layout would essentially be an altered version of Brinstar Depths. I think Brinstar Depths had a pretty unique, cool idea. Once again, this probably isn't the most fitting, but I can picture being a little interesting to maybe have the top of the stage sort of be the flat part that you battle on in Killer Instinct, but then all of a sudden a arrow or some sort of technology gives you a warning that it's about to shift, and then you'll see that there's a bit more to the platform and some of the more complex sides, and maybe like Brinstar Depths, another mini platform off to the side. And our last stage is not Pokemon floats. This is a little misleading, but you may have noticed a GameCube on the stage select screen. That's because I'm going to take the concept of Pokefloats, but instead of having Pokemon as the platforms moving around and all of that, you'll have different Nintendo consoles, portable home consoles, maybe some controllers and some generic carts and boxes, discs. I don't know if all that would be too much, but there's quite a bit of Pokemon on this stage, so maybe it would be okay. I feel like the subtitle would be secret like the rest of the Smash original stages, but I'm sort of back and forth on the title between just calling it Council Floats like Poke Floats, or calling it Council Tussle, similar to the Trophy Tussles, which were events in Melee, if you don't know, that had a kind of similar theming where you were fighting on a giant trophy, just sort of floating in space. But that's it. That's the 29 stages of Smash Melee. In Brawl, as you can sort of tell by the preview, I did some different things. Obviously, everywhere is here wouldn't work here with the complications with Rare, so we'll dive in next time with this one.